Every community, every group really has these kinds of invisible rules, right? These codes that everyone just sort of knows. And breaking them, especially when it comes to things like loyalty, trust, the fallout can be huge. So yeah, today we're taking an in-depth look at a story that really sent, well, shockwaves through the hip-hop world. It's about Cedric Zellers, the artist Alfa Omega, who was signed to T.I.'s Grand Hustle Records. And right at the center of it all was this one massive question. Was Alfa Omega a snitch?
Right. And what we really want to do here is go beyond just the headlines. We're aiming to really dissect the specific allegations, look closely at the evidence that actually came out, and then explore the impact, which was pretty devastating, on his career, his reputation. We'll also unpack those really strong cultural codes in hip-hop, the ones about loyalty, about silence. We'll get into the details, his side of the story, his justifications, and sort of the bigger picture, what happens when legal trouble slams right into cultural loyalty.
Exactly. That complexity is key here. It's definitely not a simple story. Lots of conflicting stuff, strong feelings involved. We're here to walk you through it, make sure you get not just what went down, but why it mattered so much, why it still kind of echoes today. Okay, so let's unpack this whole thing. The spark, the thing that really lit the fuse on this whole controversy was back in 2009. That's when these specific documents dug up and published by the Smoking Gun, the investigative website, started making the rounds. And they weren't just rumors. These were papers that seemed to lay Alfa Omega's past bare.
Yeah, and what immediately jumped out from those documents was the legal history they detailed. We're talking about Cedric Zellers getting involved in illicit activity back in the 90s, and it wasn't minor stuff. He was caught trying to buy guns from undercover federal agents. After that arrest, the records apparently showed he, quote, agreed to cooperate with authorities and was debriefed, which basically means he gave them detailed information on criminal associates. And it wasn't just talking. The documents suggested he provided info and testimony at trial. This cooperation reportedly helped get convictions. One name specifically mentioned was Ali Bakar, involved in drug trafficking. So you see, this wasn't just like a small favor. It suggested pretty significant active cooperation with the feds, the kind of thing that really hits hard against community trust.
Okay, so to really get why this was such a bombshell, we need to talk about the culture itself, the foundation these allegations just shattered. We have to understand what snitching means in hip-hop, in street culture. It's not just, breaking a promise. It's seen as one of the worst things you could possibly do. It cuts right to the core of solidarity, that unwritten code.
Precisely. Loyalty and silence, they aren't just like good ideas in these communities. They're fundamental norms, almost sacred. Being labeled a rat or a snitch, that's basically social death. You lose all standing, all credibility. It often stems from a deep distrust of outside authorities, So the community protects itself. Someone quoted in the source material put it pretty bluntly. They said, he's known for breaking jaws, but if a dude is a rat, then it's in your best interest not to deal with him. It was uncovered paperwork. That quote really shows you the gravity. So Alfa Omega's alleged cooperation, especially testifying, it put him squarely, publicly, against these incredibly deep-suited rules. It's a line that once you cross it in that world, coming back is, well, it's almost impossible. The act itself often matters more than why you did it.
And the reaction from the industry, from his peers, it wasn't subtle. It was immediate, decisive, and very, very public, especially from T.I., right? The head of Grand Hustle.
Yeah.
A huge figure.
Oh, absolutely. T.I.'s reaction was like a case study in how seriously these codes are taken, even at the top. He didn't mess around. He moved really fast to cut all ties with Alfa Omega. And his public statement, it was crystal clear. No ambiguity. He said, and this is a direct quote, he essentially deceived us by failing to fully disclose the truth about his past, and there is no place in our organization for dishonest and misleading behavior.
Wow. Deceived us. That's strong language.
It really is. And it wasn't just a business decision, it felt like a moral judgment, a cultural one. T.I. wasn't just reacting to some old paperwork. He was reacting to the breach of trust, the violation of that street code he represents. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, his actions sent a massive signal. It showed that the consequences for this kind of alleged behavior go way beyond legal stuff. They hit loyalty, authenticity, core values in hip-hop. It demonstrated how that cultural impact can just override contracts, relationships, everything. The fallout was huge.
But Alfa Omega didn't just, accept it and disappear, did he? He tried to fight back against all this backlash. He used YouTube, right, to try and clear his name, contest the allegations.
He did. But this is where things got, well, really complicated for him and maybe counterproductive. His messaging was, let's just say, it was all over the place, really inconsistent. It made it tough to know what to believe.
How so?
Well, on one hand, he was adamant the documents were fakes. He told people, whoever sent that document, somebody typed it up, basically claiming it was all fabricated.
Okay, so deny the evidence.
Right. But then, almost in the same breath, he'd say things that seemed to contradict that. Like, I ain't never snitched on nobody. I ain't never snitched on dude. I lied on this dude.
Wait, lied on this dude? What does that even mean in this context?
Exactly. It's confusing. Lying on someone to the authorities could imply giving false information, maybe to protect someone else, maybe not. But it's still a form of cooperating, engaging with the system, right? Even if deceptively. So you had this weird mix, claiming the proof was fake while also admitting to some kind of, well, interaction with authorities that involved lying.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a clear denial.
Not at all. It just made people more suspicious. It looked less like someone being honest about a tough past and more like someone trying to obscure things. In a culture where sometimes owning up to stuff, even bad stuff, can earn respect, this constant shifting just killed his credibility. It really raises that question, you know? How hard is it to manage your own story when something like this breaks, especially with documents and the internet digging everything up?
It definitely paints a picture that's not just black and white, is it? Not a simple case for the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
You have to figure there are gray areas, right? Motives, circumstances. They can be way more complex than the street code sometimes allows for.
You've hit on a really important point there because, yeah, it's rarely straightforward. You could definitely argue that if Zellers cooperated because he was under massive federal pressure, maybe facing serious time or even threats, that complicates judging him purely on betrayal. It makes you think, what would someone do in that kind of impossible spot? Your freedom, maybe your safety, hanging in the balance.
Right. The survival instinct is strong.
It is. But, and this is the crucial but highlighted in the source material, his failure to be upfront about this history before it broke, especially with T.I., that was a problem. That lack of transparency, combined with the really inconsistent denials afterward, it blurred the line. Was it survival? Was it betrayal? From the outside, for many people, it became impossible to tell the difference.
So the way he handled it after it came out was just as damaging as the original allegations.
Pretty much. For the community, for T.I., the end result looked the same. Information got out, trust was broken, and then the story kept changing. So that gray area, his personal dilemma, it got completely overshadowed by the strict code. And that's really what led to him being pushed out, losing his credibility. It shows how perception and how you handle accountability can sometimes matter more than the original circumstances in these really tight-knit, coded groups.
Wow. Yeah, what a complex and just difficult story. It really lays bare so many layers of expectation, loyalty, and consequence. As we wrap up, it's really clear Alfa Omega's whole situation highlights that tricky, sometimes dangerous point where legal survival meets cultural loyalty. When those two clash, the fallout, personally and professionally, can just be immense.
Absolutely. And I think what Alfa Omega's story really drives home is that in cultures built so heavily on loyalty, even just the perception of betrayal can be devastating, especially, like we saw, when it's mixed with confusing denials. That perception often becomes more powerful than any nuanced reality behind the situation. It creates this huge hurdle for someone's reputation, maybe an impossible one. It shows how your past actions, especially documented ones, can define your narrative no matter how much time passes. So for you, our listener, maybe the takeaway is thinking about those impossible choices. How do people navigate when legal systems demand one thing and their community's deepest codes demand the exact opposite? And what does this specific story tell us about reputation, about community expectations, and just the long shadow that alleged betrayal can cast? Not just in hip-hop, but really in any close group or industry where trust is everything.
Yeah, definitely leaves you with a lot to think about. We hope this deep dive gave you some clearer insight into this really complex and compelling situation. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep reflecting.